Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
Welcome to our segment called Helping Moms and Dads. We try to provide guidance and support to the sandwich generation, and we always have interesting and knowledgeable guests covering a vast array of topics that help families cope with the challenges of the aging process. Today, I wanted to address the topic of elder abuse and how we can all help vulnerable older adults. And, when we hear the term elder abuse, we tend to think, that happens to other people. We hear things on the news. It's not around me, not my family, not our neighbors. Well, you'd be surprised as to how prevalent it is. In fact, it could be happening right under your nose and you're not even realizing it. Well, this week, I'm very honored to have Maitre Anne Soden, who is an elder law lawyer and mediator. She's a frequent national and international speaker on issues affecting older persons. Anne is the founding chair of the National Elder Law section of the Canadian Bar Association, and in 2007, she was designated the prestigious Avocat Émérite by the Barreau du Québec for her contributions to the legal profession, society, and law through the development of elder law. And in 2017, she was inaugural recipient of the Lord Reading Access to Justice Award conferred by the Minister of Justice of Quebec, and in 2021, Anne was awarded the Prix de Justice Pro Bono by the Barreau du Québec. And welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
It's wonderful to be here, Matt.
Well, thank you for taking time. And you're in studio with me here on a Saturday. And you do so much for vulnerable people. And I am blessed to have you. And I want to get the word out. This is such an important topic. We're going to just at a 30,000-foot level, and when we hear elder abuse, we tend to think one or the other. There's actually many types of elder abuse. Can you describe some of them?
Certainly. Let me start by saying that abuse is, as a simple definition of abuse, it's any action or deliberate behavior by a person in a position of trust. That really is the definition when we're talking about elder abuse. It can be a child, a family member, a friend, a caregiver that causes the adult physical, emotional, or mental harm and damage, and also loss of assets and property. So the categories that are well known: physical abuse, which is rare, that is pushing or certainly having a physical aspect of violent action, and that certainly falls into the criminal realm, but very rare in what we're dealing with daily. Sexual abuse does exist, often in residential contexts, but again, it's not very common. The ones that are the most common, the most reported, are financial abuse, and that is very significant. Millions and millions of dollars every single year that are taken from older persons in particular situations, in vulnerable situations. And underscoring that, along with other reasons for it, is emotional abuse or psychological abuse of persons. So it's the most prevalent of all of the abuses, not understood, but the most prevalent is psychological abuse that underpins, for the most part, financial abuse. And then there's systemic abuse or organizational abuse, where practices or policies from institutions impose upon a person harm. And that we have to work at very, very carefully because we really don't understand. It falls under the radar, but we all need to work together to work on that.
And you're a big proponent of this systemic abuse, and we're going to talk quite a bit more about that because it's quite amazing what you are doing to help vulnerable people. We're talking with elder law lawyer Anne Soden here on Life Unrehearsed. Now, Anne, you talked about probably the biggest type of abuse would be psychological abuse, or certainly one of the more popular ones. Can you give us some examples of psychological abuse?
There are many. It can be berating a person, the older person, can be being dismissive of that person, threatening the person, putting the person down. One of the most significant word of this past year, 2022, was gaslighting. And gaslighting is very, very common in this context. It is amongst any age, but particularly with older persons.
So define gaslighting. What do you mean by that?
Gaslighting is denying certain events to the person, saying, no, that never happened. So that systematically the person is reduced regularly by saying that you just don't remember that. That happened. It's countering what the person is doing. And it's done intentionally to break the person down so that there can be a full control over that person for sure. A control issue for the person, the perpetrator's advantage. And certainly isolation of the person, reducing the visitors that the person has, lecturing, ordering, taking or making decisions for that person, infantilizing is a big one. And certainly all of these verbal attacks, imposing, even something as opposing and insisting upon making all the decisions for medical care for the person. It's taking away the person from that person and denying them their autonomy.
It's amazing because what you've just described, so many different examples of one type of abuse, which is psychological abuse. You've mentioned financial abuse. We've got physical abuse and sexual abuse. And if we really open up our eyes, whether it's family members, friends, neighbors, you might actually realize, oh my goodness, what you've just described, Anne, there is some psychological abuse. So I want to get the word out. If you do, regular listener, if you're if you see some form of abuse, what can our listeners do? Where do you go? Who do you talk to?
Well, there are many, many opportunities, starting with, I would say, if you have any kind of concern, you can reach out immediately in respect of older persons to the Aide Abus Aîné. Okay, that triple name with their number online. Perhaps if we have a little bit of a break, we can get the actual number. But Aide Abus Aîné is a hotline. It's province-wide. And they can do a first-line assessment of the risk, the urgency of a matter, and where that person could be delegated, where they could get the support and information that they need. Now, that information comes in many, many contexts in the community organizations that serve older persons. There are clinics, such as our own clinic, which is the Elder Law Clinic, and it's available also online on Google. But certainly people are invited to speak to the Centre de Justice à Proximité. There are a number of centers there under the Barreau du Québec. You just need to call Barreau du Québec and ask for a referral. The universities all have legal clinics. There are a number of clinics that will provide pro bono information. They won't necessarily accompany or represent the person, but although there are some that will, that at low cost. There is legal aid, that is another source, the legal aid clinics. But start with the hotline, who will put you out and tell you where to go. And
I've got this, I just pulled it up here, and Aide Abus Aîné. Okay, there is an 800 number, and by the way, I will post this on the our Life Unrehearsed Facebook page after, but if you have a pen and paper handy, it's 1-888-489-2287, AWNA, 1-888-489-2287. It's at least a first start. And as you mentioned off the outset, in cases where we're dealing with perhaps obvious physical or sexual abuse, now we're talking criminal now. So I guess it's okay to sometimes reach out to a 911 if you see something. Absolutely. That is the correct time to do so. There are many people who call my clinic and say that they've called the police countless times. But these matters that we deal with every day, in great part, the financial exploitation, the misuse of powers of attorney, somebody taking control of the person's life and certainly appropriating money. Those are not criminal cases,
the person already is given a status, but is just misusing that status. And that's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. So be careful and go through the hotline and find out which direction to go so that you're not bothering the police when it's not needed.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed, that's Maitre Anne Soden. Anne is an elder law lawyer and mediator, very knowledgeable. And one of the things you are a big proponent of talking about, you've influenced policy, some recent law changes in November called Loi 18. And it's such an important topic in the sense that we are trying to take the word incapacitated. You are incapacitated, and you are saying, no, it should be focusing on what the capacities that are there, that are remaining, that we need to focus in on. It is wonderful. You are changing the dial across Canada, especially here in Quebec, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first, let's head out to the CJD Traffic Center, and we're going to hear from Jill Fitzgerald.
Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
And welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, elder care planning, and the senior living industry. And we're talking about how to recognize the different types of elder abuse and what can be done about it. And we're with elder law lawyer and mediator, Maitre Anne Soden. And we're going to continue our conversation, and I absolutely want to address something I know is dear to your heart. It is the shifting of attitude of the general public, of moving away from someone being incapacitated rather than supporting an individual's capacities. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, we all have an obligation. It is a legal obligation, but poorly perhaps understood because we're very much beset with taking care of an older person. The attitude is often one that the person is necessarily deteriorating. And that is an overlay, that ageist attitude, which still is extremely prevalent throughout society. And it is our default zone. And we have to dispel thoughts that older persons are necessarily in decline and that there is incapacity that is just going to follow. So what we try to do always, and of course, as I say, it's only the law, to maximize capacity, not concentrate on incapacity, but where there is incapacity, we look to minimize the impact on the rights of the person. We have to safeguard the autonomy of the person. And given that this has happened, it's been the new law which came into effect on the 1st of November of this year. It was promulgated 2 years before, but it came into effect as of the 1st of November. And it undertakes to better protect the rights of persons who are in vulnerable situations. And I say in vulnerable situations. We're all capable of being in vulnerable situations and being vulnerable in different situations. We want to lift the person up, safeguard their autonomy, and maximize their capacity at all times. So we have removed forever the notion of a regime of curatorship. We now have a tutorship, which was there before, but was poorly and not sufficiently used. And we can modify and respect the person's rights within the tutorship. The same thing should be true of our mandates of protection, where we input information within those documents to make sure that the rights of the person and the inclusion of the person is always there, regardless of how much that person might decline. Not necessarily decline, but could decline. So that plus the introduction of assistance, of having an assistant. Now, this I've done for many, many years, from the very beginning, 25 years ago, to provide accompaniment and assistance to a person in an informal way. But now we can have it done in a more formal way, where the person is recognized, certainly for banks, to have a person accompany them, but not to be making the decisions for them. So to advocate or to accompany that person and make sure their wishes are communicated.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed, that's lawyer elder law lawyer, Anne Soden. And you bring up good points. Let's shift it to focusing in on their capacities as opposed to their incapacities. You mentioned ageism, and I want to address this very quickly. I had Hazel McCallion. This might be a familiar name to some Canadians. She was the mayor of Mississauga for decades. I think she's 102 years old now, a very big proponent and supporter of ageism awareness. I interviewed her at 99 years old, and I tried to get her on a specific day, and she goes, "Oh no, I can't go on that day because I'm on a flight to Australia for an ageism conference." This is at 99, so she joined me the week after. So let's briefly talk about ageism and how older persons are discriminated against. Can you give little examples of maybe we're not even realizing we're discriminating? Can you talk to some of that?
Well, certainly the fields or the areas in which persons are discriminated against, and of course this is counter to our Charter of Rights. It is illegal to deny a person the dignity that they are so right, and deserving of. Every single one of us is in the marketplace, in retirement in general, in the workplace. There has been discrimination against persons, so that they do not have the means, they do not have the abilities, they're not technically savvy, and hence they're looked on as second-class citizens. In car licensing, there can be discrimination against persons. If they make a mismove in driving, certainly they can be called upon to do their testing and have temporarily their license removed. I've certainly represented persons who have done the same things that they did when they were young, but all of a sudden, because they have gray hair, they've been stopped and asked to be retested to make sure that they know what they're doing. And in both of these cases, there was a truck driver, a former truck driver, as well as a taxi driver. But not turning your head sufficiently around was basis for, because you were older, to have you retested.
Whereas if you did the exact same thing at 17 years old, no problem.
Right.
It's understood. Okay, got it.
Housing and in healthcare settings, there's a great deal of infantilization, depersonalization of persons who are in those settings, and loss of autonomy.
Very good examples of that. And we have about a minute left. I absolutely want to address Elder Law Canada. This is... You're a pioneer with Elder Law, and can you tell us a little bit more about Elder Law Canada?
Well, Elder Law Canada is simply a term that embraces the kind of work that I have been doing for the past 25 years. But the Elder Law Clinic, which is a division of a research institute, the National Institute of Law, Policy and Aging, which has as its service division the Elder Law Clinic here in Montreal, but which serves all of the province of Quebec, to secure the legal rights, the dignity, autonomy, and security and quality of life of older persons. Not just to secure it, but to reinforce it. So certainly that embraces practices and procedures, and to encourage we, the professionals who are in the continuum of intervention every day, to be working together in an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, with various different parties from these different professionals having the same respect for the rights of the person and the minimization of any kind of removal of rights.
You brought up a good point, and we have to wrap it up here, but because we were talking off air about professionals, I think they always have the best interests of heart of individuals, but sometimes they may actually be doing more harm than good just because they're just not up to speed with some of the
Right.
latest policies.
Yes, if there's abuse and exploitation, often the attitude is, older person, you necessarily must be showing some incapacity if you've allowed yourself to be exposed and allow this abuse and exploitation. And so that person is set aside. They found a solution for the person being protected as opposed to solving the exploitation and abuse, lifting the person back up, empowering them, and setting them on their way with support. With support.
Very well said, Anne. Anne, we want to thank you very much. We could go on, and we're going to have you back on the show, but I want to thank you very much for joining me.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. That's Matron Anne Soden. She's an elder law lawyer and mediator. Next week on Life Unrehearsed, making sense of all the different types of personal insurance out there and what's best for you and your family as you age, and ultra marathon skates across the country. We're talking 19 hours and 26 minutes of nonstop skating by many Canadians across the country next Saturday, January 14th, and it's all in the support of Alzheimer's. Thank you for tuning in to Life Unrehearsed. As a reminder, for all your inquiries or assistance with life transitions, elder care planning, and the senior living industry, it'd be my pleasure to help. Just simply look us up under Lianas Senior Transition Support. That's Lianas, Lianas, Lianas Senior Transition Support. Many thanks to our technical producer, Dean. Great job today. You can listen to Life Unrehearsed here on CJD 800 every Saturday at 3 p.m.